Mid-1970s, there was a murder in downtown Seattle in one of the dormitories for the University of Washington. One of the female victims was beaten to death. Nobody knew who it was, and sure enough, the police launched an investigation. A man walked into the police station by the name of Ted Bundy. Unbeknownst to the police, he was the perpetrator of this heinous crime. They interviewed him, and because of his outstanding character in the community and all the things that he has accomplished in that short period of time that he lived in Seattle, he was wiped off as a suspect. Little to known to them, he was going to become one of America's most notorious serial killers. This is the lady killer, Ted Bundy. A 22-year-old woman by the name of Eleanor Louise Cobell gave birth to Ted. At the time, she was unmarried, and Ted didn't really know his father, or it's not really known that he had a father. According to many other sources, Ted had a father by the name of either Lloyd Marshall or Jack Worthington. While some rumors had it that his father was also his grandfather, because Ted's birth certificate lists his father as unknown, his biological father's identity may never be confirmed. In 1951, Louise married Johnny Bundy. While Ted took his name, he reportedly didn't have much respect for his father, whom he resented for being too uneducated and working class. Johnny and Louise had several children together. Louise was working as a secretary at the University of Puget Sound and still married to Johnny in the 1970s, when Ted was accused of most of his crimes. She refused to believe the charges for years, although she changed her stance after he confessed on death row in Florida State Penitentiary. Bundy was born in Burlington, Vermont on November 24, 1946. Bundy's started life as a mother's secret shame. As his illegitimate birth humiliated her deeply religious parents, Louise delivered Ted at a home for unwed mothers in Vermont and later brought her son to her parents' home in Philadelphia. To hide the fact he was an illegitimate child, Bundy was raised as the adopted son of his grandparents and was told that his mother was his sister. Eleanor moved with Bundy to Tacoma, Washington a few years later, and soon married his stepfather, Johnny. From all appearances, Bundy grew up in a content, working-class family. He showed an unusual interest in the macabre at an early age. Around the age of 3, he became fascinated by knives, and a shy but bright child, Bundy did well in school, but not with his peers. As a teenager, a darker side of his character started to emerge. Bundy liked to peer into other people's windows and thought nothing of stealing things he wanted from other people. Bundy graduated from the University of Washington with a degree in psychology in 1972. He had been accepted to law school in Utah, although he would never earn his degree. While a student at the University of Washington, Bundy fell in love with a wealthy, pretty young woman from California. She had everything that he wanted: money, class, and influence. He was devastated by their breakup. Many of Bundy's later victims resembled his college girlfriend, attractive students with long, dark hair. By the mid-1970s, Bundy had transformed himself by becoming more outwardly confident and active in social and political matters. He even got a letter of recommendation from the Republican governor of Washington after working on his campaign. Bundy confessed to 36 killings of young women across several states in the 1970s, but experts believe that the final tally may be closer to 100 or more. The exact number of women Bundy killed will never be known. His killings usually followed a gruesome pattern. He often raped his victims before beating them to death or strangling them as well. He'd also cut up portions of their bodies and strew them about in the wilderness of Washington and other states that he was in. More notably, there's actually a burial site located near Issaquah, Washington on Taylor Mountain. Well, there's some debate as to when Bundy started killing. Most sources say that he began his murderous rampage around 1974. Around this time, many women in the Seattle area and in nearby Oregon went missing. Stories circulated about some of the victims last being seen in the company of a young, dark-haired man known as Ted. He often lured his victims into his car by pretending to be injured and asking for their help. Their kindness proved to be a fatal mistake. In the fall of 1974, Bundy moved to Utah to attend law school, and a woman began disappearing there as well. The following year, he was pulled over by the police. A search of his vehicle uncovered a cache of burglary tools and crowbar, face mask, rope, and handcuffs. He was arrested for the possession of these tools, and the police began to link him to much, much more sinister things. In 1975, Bundy was arrested in the kidnapping of Carol DeRanche, one of the few women to escape his clutches. He was convicted and received a 1 to 15-year jail sentence. Bundy escaped from prison twice in 1977. The first time he was indicted on murder charges for the death of a young Colorado woman and decided to act as his own lawyer in the case. During a trip to the courthouse library, he jumped out of a window and made his first escape. He was captured 8 days later. This all happened in Aspen, Colorado, and it's nothing short of a miracle that he didn't die of exposure in the Aspen wilderness. In December, Bundy escaped from custody again. He climbed out of a hole he made in the ceiling of his cell, having dropped more than 30 pounds to fit through the small opening. Authorities did not discover that Bundy was missing for 15 hours, giving the serial killer a big head start on the police. After Bundy's second escape from prison, he eventually made his way to Tallahassee, Florida. On the night of January 14, 1978, Bundy broke into the Chi Omega sorority house at the Florida State University. He attacked 4 of the young female residents, killing 2 of them. On February 9th, Bundy kidnapped and murdered a 12-year-old girl named Kimberly Leach. These crimes marked the end of his murderous rampage, as he was soon pulled over by the police that February. The most damning evidence connecting Bundy to the Chi Omega murders at the FSU were bite marks on one of the bodies, which were a definite match to Bundy. If you'd like to know on how aggressive Bundy was, the bite mark was located on the buttocks of one of the victims. It was also known that he would use a hacksaw to chop up the victims. He would often also return to the body sites to perform sex acts on them. It was a common known thing for him to be a necrophiliac, and he's not the only serial killer in history that has displayed these behaviors. Bundy's good looks and charm and intelligence made him something of a celebrity during these trials. While on his trial, it was very well known that he often had groups of women that would be there just to watch him, and they would usually be attracted to his charm and the way that he looked and his personality. It was also known that sometimes that it would also be known that women would be allowed to go and see Bundy in the prison. He was convicted to death as per the Florida state law. In July 1979, Bundy was convicted for the 2 Chi Omega murders at FSU, and he was given the death penalty twice. He received another death sentence in 1980 for the murder of Kimberly Leach, and Bundy appealed to trying to take this case as high as the U.S. Supreme Court, but he was turned down. He also offered information on some unsolved murders to avoid Florida's electric chair, but he could not delay justice forever and was executed in 1989. Elizabeth Klopfer, Ted Bundy's girlfriend, in 1969, Bundy began a 6-year relationship with Elizabeth, whom he met in a Seattle bar, and Klopfer was a single mom of a young daughter and struggled with alcoholism, and Bundy took care of her, and she said that he was a warming and loving husband, or boyfriend. In 1974, Klopfer started to suspect Bundy's crimes When she questioned him about odd behaviors, like keeping a meat cleaver in his desk, he used his charm to deflect her concerns. Cleffer secretly went to the police with her suspicion of Bundy's involvement in prominent local murders, but they didn't believe he was the killer. The pair remained together, although they grew distant when Bundy moved to Olympia the following year. Years later, she broke ties with Bundy for good and wrote a book about her experience. While on a visit, Bundy had confessed to Cleffer over the phone from his prison cell that he had tried to kill her and couldn't resist his impulses when he felt his sickness building in him, she later wrote. Bundy married another woman, Carol Ann Boone, a mother of two whom he dated before his initial arrest, in a courtroom during the penalty phase of his trial. He proposed and she accepted in the presence of the judge, making the marriage legitimate in Florida, and the couple had met 6 years earlier when they were both worked at the Department of Emergency Services in Olympia. Boone gave birth to a daughter, Rose, in 1982, and she named Bundy as the father. Not much is known about Rose today. Boone actually realized that Bundy was guilty of the crimes, and she divorced him 3 years prior to his execution. Boone stopped visiting Bundy during the last 2 years of his imprisonment. On January 24th, 1989, Bundy was executed at around 7 a.m. at the Florida State Prison in the electric chair, sometimes known as Old Sparky. Outside the prison, crowds cheered and even set off fireworks after Bundy's execution. Bundy's body was cremated in Gainesville and had no public ceremony, but before he was executed, he signed a release form that said that he would requested his ashes to be scattered in the Cascade Mountains of Washington State, where he murdered at least 4 of his victims. Good afternoon, everybody. It's Melodite63. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. So I have a couple of ties to this story. My grandfather was actually in Seattle at the time of the murders. He didn't know that, but I did. He was actually there taking pictures of Henry Winkler as he was walking outside of his hotel. So the most famous picture in my family is Henry Winkler taking a picture of my grandfather taking a picture of him, if that makes sense. I probably explained that really horribly. I wish I had the picture of it, but if I can find it here in post-editing, that will be incredible. For those of you that don't know who Henry Winkler is, he's the Fonz. He starred in Happy Days. It was like a hit TV show in the 70s, 80s, 90s. I can't remember. I've never watched it, but I just know about it. Also, another really kind of cool story. I have a friend from junior high who had a dad that was on a business trip, I believe it was in Florida, and had his identity stolen by Ted Bundy. So if you actually go on the Wikipedia page and you go to known aliases under Ted Bundy's name, one of them is Chris Hagen. So, anyway, so hope you guys enjoyed the video. Again, like, comment, and subscribe if you're new to the family, Melodite family, what am I saying? And hit that notification bell if you're new here. Anyway, guys, hope you guys enjoyed the video today. Have a good one. Stay mellow.